those who don't know my name is James Thuch Madhier, and I'm the founder of the Rainmaker Enterprise. I would like to sincerely thank you all for coming out tonight to support our venture. The journey to today has been a long one, but at the beginning of something great. That's what I feel. We are so excited to host this project, and we are also equally excited that we are also hosting this project launch as well as a fundraiser event. It is so befitting to be gathered in a cafe serving South Sudanese organic food while talking about supporting South Sudanese farmers to be food secure using affordable and efficient technology. This cafe that you are seated in now, the Jalgwa Cafe, is owned by a young South Sudanese entrepreneur, Mr. Emmanuel Jal, who is also a renowned recording artist, a Hollywood actor, an ex-child soldier from Sudan, and a peace activist. I urge you to try the superfoods, especially upstairs if you haven't already. These are the foods that make South Sudanese so tall, and clean, and smooth skins, as you can see from the few faces in the room. So I ask you to feel at South Sudan today. Tonight, I want to share with you 4 main things. First, I will tell you about my journey from South Sudan to Canada. I will inform you about the past and current experiences in South Sudan that I saw firsthand. Secondly, I will tell you about my motivation behind starting Rainmaker Enterprise. I firmly believe that projects such as the Rainmaker Enterprise are crucial to bringing positive and lasting solutions to pressing problems such as famine and food insecurity in South Sudan. Finally, I'll talk to you about Rainmaker Works, how it works, and lastly, in that regard, I will also talk about how you and anyone that is watching outside can also get involved in the project. To begin about my story, as some of you already know, I was born in southern Sudan, which is now the Republic of South Sudan. At the time, it was Southern Sudan as a region. I grew up in southern Sudan until when I was 15. I was born during the deadly Sudanese Civil War. If some of you read history books, maybe you might have heard about it. The civil war that ended up splitting Africa's largest country into 2 separate nations that gave birth to my nation, which is South Sudan now. Being born into war is different from war interrupting peacetime. For me, all I had ever known as I grew up was constant war and the struggle for freedom of South Sudanese people that I would hear adults talk about. Kids being kids, war was our normal. Everything we made was connected to war. Our car toys, which we made from scrap metals, mimicked war armors. The hide and seek games that some of you here might have played while you were young, we transformed them into battalions. I still have scars that I cannot account for up to date because I don't know how I actually got them. Most importantly, we learned to model a normal life around the abnormal circumstances that we were in at this particular time. For example, we would dismantle bullets to make whistles out of them that the referees could use during our local soccer matches that we played from balls made from clothes that are torn apart and thrown away by people that no longer need them. You see, we learned a circular economy before it was a thing here in the West, actually. We were sustainable. Though our playtimes would often be interrupted by aerial bombings, we learned to resume playing immediately when the sounds of the exploding bombs subsided. But some sites are a little too much. Too much not to disturb the normal lives of kids in abnormal situations. I remember a vivid, horrible scene where one time the Antonov, which in this case, for those of you that don't know, is either a Russian or a Ukrainian aerial bombing plane that used to bomb most of our neighborhoods at this particular time. On one fateful day, the aerial bombing plane bombed our neighborhood, killing our only ophthalmologist, his young children, 2 of his patients, and a cow that his patient brought as payment for treating them. I have experienced several painful things, but what made this particular experience more painful for me was my grandmother, who was receiving an eye surgery from this doctor at the time. Due to old age or maybe sickness, I may not be sure, she was supposed to receive her eyesight from the doctor, but since the bomb claimed the only ophthalmologist we had, it also claimed the eyesight of my grandmom. I was, and I'm still am, the closest child to my grandmother. I call her every day. As such, I was forced to be the walking aid for my grandmom to wherever she wanted to go. Each time I would go on such journeys with her, I would remember that fateful aerial bomb blast that had claimed the only doctor and wish I could change the hand of the clock so that my grandmom would get her eyesight back. Part of it was selfish. As a child, I also wanted to go and play instead of leading her to wherever she wanted to go to. Given such hardships and interruptions of school and lack of any infrastructure in place, I fled to a refugee camp in northern Kenya called Kakuma in 2005. My main reason for fleeing was connected to education. I wanted to go where my education would go uninterrupted by the sound of bullets so that I could concentrate on school. Though I failed in avoiding the sound of the bullets in the refugee camp because the local population that are very highly marginalized in Kenya and in this northern part of the country would come and loot the food of the local of the refugees in the camp. However, I managed to obtain a primary education, a precious gift out of the dire living conditions in the refugee camp. After completing elementary school, the camp was closed, unfortunately, for South Sudanese because after this time, there was peace agreement that was signed and South Sudan was declared peaceful. This repatriation process dashed my hopes for high school. Since there is nothing that can kill the dream of a determined person, I returned to South Sudan in 2007 on a truck to look for any ways possible to fund my own education back in Kenya, because I believe that was the only place that has the conducive environment for my education. I was lucky to get a job as a census supervisor for 5 months. I was well paid. I saved every single penny, which I used to pay for my travel back to Kenya and paid for myself the first 2 years of high school. When I ran out of money, I did not know what to do, since I still had 2 more years to complete high school. My dream of completing high school was becoming distant again. But for every determined person, there is always a person of goodwill to believe in you. This may not be always the case, but in my case, I was lucky to get one. A Kenyan woman named Nancy Kagure, who heard about me from her son, with whom we were in the same class together, decided to sponsor the last 2 years of my high school. And in fact, she decided to transfer me from the school that I was in to a better school that she thought was fit for my performance. In 2011, I successfully finished high school at the top of my graduating class. but there is always a new hurdle to climb. This time, as a refugee in Kenya, I did not have an opportunity to continue to university, even if I did well. At this point, I believe I had some knowledge that I needed to share with others anyway. So I decided to go back to Kakuma refugee camp that I was in to give back to the community there. At this point, I worked with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and Winnow Trust International through their Girl Child Education Program and the humanitarian interpretation for asylum seekers and refugees. After 2 years of selfless community mobilization around the importance of girl child education and helping asylum seekers gain refugee status, I was lucky to come to Canada through the World University Service of Canada, a scholarship that sponsors high-achieving refugee students around the world. I've shared this information with some of you who are here today. As much as some of my experiences have been those that others cannot imagine, I believe they have allowed me to grow to become a resilient, hardworking, and a compassionate person who is driven to bring important social changes to the world, and more especially to the people of South Sudan that I believe are still going through hardship now. When South Sudan gained independence from the repressive regime in the north on July 7, 2011, I was among the millions of South Sudanese that Jubilee Relief Coordinator, whom I had the pleasure to talk with about famine in South Sudan, said that more than 1 million children are estimated to be acutely malnourished across the country, including 270,000 children who face the imminent risk of death. As much as I highly commend the work that many international humanitarian aid agencies are doing right now to address famine and food insecurity facing South Sudan, I still believe that most of them are only addressing the symptoms of this crisis. During the 1998 famine, which I witnessed firsthand when I was in Sudan, food drops, in this case for those who are not familiar with what food drops are, these are some of the aid that is taken to areas that are of high risk of conflict. And because the humanitarian workers don't want to land on the ground, they can only drop it through the air, so that people that are starving to death can get a chance to get the food. But here is the problem. Food drops were only benefiting strong men who could run to grab them while the victims of hunger were dying. This is what I saw. As a once dignified South Sudanese, I'm coming to terms with the reality that through this famine, South Sudan is becoming just another piece of sensational news to the world that has become numb to the endless reports of sensational stories about Africa and the rest of the world that is in turmoil. The sensationalization of various crises on the African continent, which is achieved through sharing of graphic images, perpetuate only hopelessness in a continent where countless long-term solutions to this crisis abound. Sensationalizing crisis often dehumanizes the people that ought to be saved. I call this insidious act a humanitarian pornography, and urge to dehumanize the victim to evoke the feelings of comfortable, privileged people that are too busy to care, unless they see a humanitarian photographic image of a young girl with a vulture next to her waiting to see her die to take over her corpse, a situation that happened in Sudan during the famine. Or an image of a young handsome boy washed off the shore of the Mediterranean Sea, which then would force a few privileged people to retweet his image on their smartphones and recline back on their comfortable seats, satisfied that they have saved the world. The level of disregard to the dignity of victims of crisis and their dehumanization through the quick fixes are things that must change. I believe that innovative, sustainable, and impactful local solutions that give agency to the people on the ground are really needed. And that should be now. A major source of conflict, hunger, and food insecurity in South Sudan results from the lack of access to water. People and animals compete over scarce water resources in South Sudan. Some of you may not know this, but the cow economy is the largest form of economy in South Sudan. The cow is the mode of transaction and the means of wealth. In South Sudan, there are over 12 million heads of cows. That's an average of at least 1.3 per one person. This large number of livestock depends on communal lands for pastures and water. Since there are dry periods from November until April, people move with their cattle to find green pastures and clean water. This movement causes conflict, often less talked about in the mainstream media. You only hear about the conflict that is caused through political disagreements. But a resource-driven conflict is less talked about. Increasingly, scarce grazing lands and water points have caused clashes between communities that were living in peace before. As the world's youngest country, South Sudan also lacks the infrastructure necessary to sustain year-round agricultural production, and instead relies completely on rainwater, which only falls for half of the year. And in recent years, rainfall has been erratic, and there have been droughts and floods. This, combined with displacement from political conflict, is preventing farmers and cattle headers, which make up overwhelming majority of the country's population, from continuing with their livelihoods. This is why the Rainmaker Enterprise was started, to allow South Sudanese people to take charge of their own problems, their own livelihoods, and their own futures. Traditionally, communities in South Sudan had spiritual leaders called rainmakers. Where I come from, they are called Banjbith. That is my local language. Who were entrusted with offering special sacrifices that appeased the gods of rain around April every year for rain to come. This would often coincide with the rain patterns and the weather patterns, and the rain would often fall after they perform their own offerings, allowing communities to cultivate and have a bounty to share with each other. However, with the changing climate, Banjbith, the rainmakers, have been challenged by prolonged droughts and floodings, and the result has been extreme hunger, poverty, and communities torn apart by strifes over limited water resources. The Rainmaker Enterprise reinvents Rainmaker's tasks that can enable consistent supply of water to allow communities to cultivate year-round and have a bounty to share with each other again. The Rainmaker Enterprise aims to install efficient and low-cost solar-powered water pumps and irrigation systems that will provide water for the dignity of South Sudanese people. And I insist, for the dignity of South Sudanese people. By doing so, the farmers will be able to effectively use the abundant amount of sunlight and underground water that are available in South Sudan. Solar-powered drip irrigation is the combination of two systems that have each had enormous impact independently. Drip irrigation is an extremely efficient mechanism for delivering water and fertilizer directly to plants. It increases yields and allows for the introduction of new high-value crops in regions where they could not be sustained by rainfall alone. Solar-powered pumps save hours of labor daily in rural areas where pumping is traditionally done by hand by women, in this case, women and girls. Solar panels are more durable, much less expensive, and much more sustainable than alternative diesel-powered generators. And with inflation in South Sudan now, diesel-powered generators are even out of the play. When used together, these technologies allow for sustainable year-round production of market, vegetables, and livestock feed. Local farmers will be able to farm high-value vegetables for home consumption and use them to sell at the local market at subsidized prices. This is the only way that the inflation that has devastated the whole country can be combated. The Rainmaker Enterprise is committed to finding a local means to achieving food security, addressing hunger and resource conflicts. By installing these solar-powered drip irrigation systems, which will not only allow agriculture and pastoralism to continue, but allow it to occur year-round. The Rainmaker Enterprise believes that it is crucial not to postpone investment in agriculture until conflict and famine have been overcome, because the rhetoric is there is no investment in a conflict-affected zone. But when will conflict end? And when will people be safe with long-term solutions? In fact, a local solution to famine, food insecurity, and lack of livelihood is an essential part of the solution to the conflict. It is an essential part of why the Rainmaker was started. Grassroots, community-led, and long-term solutions are required. South Sudanese, which I believe you may have interacted with some of them, are hardworking and resilient people who need more than just relief efforts. They need the freedom to take control of their own problems. So, for those who are watching online and for those who are here, I invite you to join me on this exciting journey. I invite you to help me achieve the goal of Rainmaker in 3 ways. 1, you can help us crowdfund our first goal of 60,000 Canadian dollars, which we just launched on GoFundMe page, which you could find gofundme.com/Rainmaker Enterprise. And that is the page. I invite you to be part of amazing people committed to provide water for dignity in South Sudan, a better model of helping those in need. You can donate on our beautiful website, which one of our own, John Acey, who is here with us tonight, designed for us. The website is rainmakerenterprise.org. It's powered by PayPal, and you're free to donate there. So the second way you can help is to go on our website and donate to our cause. There's no limit. Donate as little as you can. I also urge you, most importantly, the loudest voices are usually the negative ones. So I urge you, and I urge you to join us online, to urge the internet community to be part of the team providing water for dignity, which is the hashtag we have decided to push for the people of South Sudan. You can alert your networks to support us. Tell someone, for example, we have prominent South Sudanese like Luol Deng, who is an NBA player. If this comes to his attention and support the cause, he will be contributing to the livelihoods of South Sudanese people. I wish you can imagine how the South Sudanese people have suffered, especially from a long-term conflicts that have been going on, I don't even know. Most people that I speak with, I have never met a South Sudanese that was born in peace. Maybe one day. I sincerely thank everyone that has been and will continue to be part of this journey, especially the amazing team that supported me to put this together. To save our time, I will not go into details of calling out your names, but you know that I am highly indebted to your support. This is not for me. Rainmaker Enterprise would not be where it is without your selfless support. Thank you all for coming, and thank you everyone who is watching live. This is the start of a challenging and an exciting journey. We at Rainmaker Enterprise are happy to have you on board to support us to provide water for dignity in South Sudan.